First of all, a big thank you and welcome to everyone tuning in to our first mentor Q&A at Kid Power. We're really excited. We've got a really great group of mentors joining us today. So I am Caitlin Ewan. If you don't know, I am the program director for Mentors and Get Kid Power. Our volunteer coordinator, Kiana, is also here with us, and then a wonderful group of mentors who will introduce themselves in a second. If anyone streaming at home has a question as we go through the evening, feel free to drop it in the chat box. Kiana's going to be watching that because we want to make sure that all your questions are answered. And we really want to make sure you know as much as possible about what it's really like to be a mentor. I want to make sure that our mentors have as much time as possible to share. So I'm going to be really quick in my introduction, but if you don't know who Mentors Inc. is, Mentors Inc. has been serving DC's youth for 30 years by matching, for over 30 years through matching DC's young people with caring adult mentors. And since joining Kid Power in 2019, have only expanded the program and had the sustainability and the resources in place to make it through a pandemic and pivot as we all have and be flexible. So it's been really, really great. As a community-based mentoring program that is one-on-one, each of these mentors have a unique story mentoring their protege. Each relationship's different. Each set of goals is different. So that's why we really want to have them talk directly to you and share their stories. So with that, I'm going to jump into the first couple of questions, and then Kiana will let us know if we have some in the chat box. So first, I want to talk about what made you all decide to become a mentor. What kind of drew you to this work? So I'm going to start this one off. I'm going to ask Ryan to jump in there right off the bat.
Sure. So I wanted to do something to give back to the community. I wanted to do some kind of community service, and I'm an attorney. That's my profession. So I literally am an advisor to clients. And so I felt like mentoring and giving advice to a young person would be a great way to kind of use my professional skills in a way to, channel my professional skills into community service, so to speak.
Thank you. Kalia, do you want to share a little bit about why you decided to become a mentor?
I love working with youth. I just love children, and I thought the best way for me to give back was to work with youth and just do the best I can to help them have just the most successful future possible. My background is community-based too, as far as being, a National Guardsman and things of that nature. And so I'm just all about community, and it's no better way to give back to the community than working with children.
Awesome. Anyone else really want to jump in and share their why they got started?
Sure, I can jump in. So I also, similar to I'm sure everybody else here, was really looking for ways to give back, and I started I joined the program a little after graduating college. I had been reflecting a lot and kind of thinking about how I had benefited from mentorship as a young person myself, not exactly in the ways that Mentors Inc. works, where it's a direct one-on-one relationship, but with teachers, with other older people who had been mentors in my life. I did some peer mentorship when I was in college, and I thought, I can't really be a philanthropist. I'm just 22, 23 years old. I don't really have a lot of money to give, but I do have time. And so it seemed like the best use of time and the benefit of others would be sort of trying to give whatever little wisdom I could share. So that was kind of the motivation.
Yeah, cool. Danny, I would like to hear also what surprised you about your mentoring experience with us. What's something that surprised you?
I really had no idea what to expect coming in. So I think everything to some degree at least was a surprise. I think how quickly the relationship formed between me and my mentee, my protege, I think was a bit of a surprise. I think, and it wasn't without its bumps in the road. We had a few weeks where it was hard for us to keep our weekly conversations going because it's just a matter of getting in the habit. But I in the year and a half that we've been working together, we've gotten really close. There was a moment maybe a year in where he asked if we could still be friends after this was over, right? And so I think just knowing that you can form a relationship that quickly and that closely with a young person really surprised me. I thought it would be a little bit more, I don't want to say distant, but there would be a little bit more of a barrier there, but it's been really rewarding.
Awesome. Liz, what's been something that surprised you about this experience?
I was hoping you were going to come to me because I think I've got a good one. I thought when I set up with Mentors Inc. and it would be there would be a certain structure to it, and then I was required to give my protege advice in certain areas. And I think the beauty that I've seen of the program is the relationship is really tailored to what the student needs. And what my protege needs is not what I thought she would need out of me when I joined. And it has ebbed and flowed and changed throughout the 2 years that we've been matched, as she's risen from a freshman to a junior. So seeing those changes, and I think knowing that gives you a little bit of freedom to figure out, what your mentee, what your protege needs. So I thought that surprised me the most.
Anyone else want to? Yeah, Onisha. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in. So my mentee is now a freshman at Tennessee State University. And what surprised me the most were two things: the level of depth that we developed in our relationship throughout the 3 years that I was her mentor, and it's continued post Mentors Inc. And the sincerity of that relationship. I didn't expect that much. And then two, we go into this with the idea of serving others. For me, I went into it with the idea that it takes a village in order to raise a child and to get that seed matriculated to the next point in their life. But what I realized is that I learned so much from my mentee through serving and through giving that I feel like I benefited just as much, if not more so, than she did in the mentor-mentee relationship. So that was surprising for me. I didn't expect that, but in terms of graciousness and resilience and watching her go through the trials and tribulations and still maintain and continue to thrive, that was inspiring for me. If you can do that as a 15, 16, 17-year-old and now 18-year-old woman, then why can't I apply that to my life as a 30-something woman? So I learned a lot through watching her grow and watching her achieve.
Thanks, Onisha. Anyone else want to jump in with something surprising?
Yeah, sure. So, what I've been most surprised about over the past 2 years is just the incredible growth of my protege since, we were matched his sophomore year and now he's a senior. And, I think his sophomore year, his interests and concerns are just so different from his interests and concerns as a senior, and just seeing how much he's understood kind of now how to get to the next step and the steps he's taken to kind of set his sights on something and go achieve it. And I found that super impressive, but also just, surprising in that he just surprises me every time I talk to him in how much he's grown.
Absolutely. Anyone else want to jump in? Okay.
Yeah, I'll share really quickly. I'd say being, looks like, I guess one of the newer mentors in terms of time served, I was very surprised with just how organic things came along. Again, when you kind of develop a relationship in the middle of what we're going through now, I was very much worried as to how we would, stay in touch or the conversations to be had. But I think the rewarding thing is it just came very, very naturally, very easy. We used to, when it was a bit warmer outside, we would kind of socially distance, do things outside, and then it would go from the scheduled calls to just kind of reaching out on a random Tuesday night. And it just, again, came very easily. So it's been a pleasant surprise.
Awesome. You know, and Javar kind of started on something that the program looks a lot different than it did, you know, a year ago. So for some of our matches who have kind of transitioned from our traditional model of you talk once a week on the phone, but the heart of it is happening in that in-person time. I mean, a lot of you who started with me or, you know, with the program a couple years ago, like that's what we pushed for, was that in-person time. And things have really, really changed. But what I want to talk a little bit about that transition to virtual. Let's start, I want Nick to jump in on this one first.
Sure. Yeah, so obviously it's been a challenge for everybody since March, where we've all kind of had to change our entire lives. But for the Mentors Inc. aspect, I think in some ways it's actually helped, at least my personal relationship with my mentee. We now have a scheduled Zoom call instead of doing phone calls or texts as much. And just kind of seeing him and seeing that he's doing well really helps a lot. And I know he's a super positive kid, but even this has even gotten to him a little bit, with Kayla, I know we've talked about a little bit, but being able to have that connection and having that, you know, weekly check-in to make sure he's doing well, and that even with school is fine, but also life is fine. Like a lot of people have said in the call already, that like you kind of think of it first as like, okay, I'm just helping this student out. I'm not a tutor, but I'm making sure he's doing well in school. But then kind of with mine, it really transformed immediately into, okay, I'm really in this mentor relationship. I'm just kind of making sure he's doing well in general. It's not just about school. It's not just about college. It's about all these different things at once. And then throw a pandemic on top of that. You know, there's a lot going on for a teenager. So really, you know, keeping the cadence up and then finding new ways to stay connected. And I know we were able to meet a couple times, similar to others said, before it got too cold, socially distant, but doing something. I know that meant a lot to both of us to be able to do that. So hoping that as the spring comes around, vaccines are coming around, all these things, we'll get back to some sort of normal. But I think we'll still build upon what we've done here already, and keep up some of this virtual Zoom relationship, and then add on hopefully the in-person again.
Anyone else that kind of made that transition from in-person to virtual want to hop in? I definitely want Nia to hop in here too, because Nia was matched with her protege on March 3rd. And then 10 days later, on March 13th, the world changed dramatically. So, you know, had the in-person match party, we kind of expected one thing, but if everyone thinks back to March, things changed a lot. So talk a little bit about what that was like, given where you were at as a new match.
So yes, like you said, literally we had the matchup, one FaceTime call, and then next thing we knew, the world was shut down as far as we knew it. And coming in, you know, Mentors Inc. does provide all these different programs and systems that help us keep going with our matches. But when everything changes, you can't meet someone, then it's kind of like, okay, now what? And they were there every step of the way to help guide us, but at the same time, we're all learning. So it was like a learning curve for her, Mentors Inc., and myself, and it's just a system that's worked together. And unfortunately, you know, everyone's family is different, so I've only got to meet with my match in person one time. So we literally rely on phone calls, and I think, like they said, you don't expect to really learn much from your mentor. Like, you don't understand how much they're giving back to you as much as you're giving to them. So I think I've been helping hold her together, but she's also been doing the same for me, because sometimes it's like, I don't want to get on the phone today, but then you talk to this teenager that's bubbly and it's like, oh, okay, maybe I needed this phone call. So it's been a great experience. I still don't know what to expect, because we don't know when we'll get to see each other again. And you never know how the other person's feeling. If they're Zoom exhausted. School is different from everyone, but it's been a pleasure just to meet someone new. And, you know, she's in a different stage of life, so it's helped me so much, I think, as much as it's helped her.
Anyone else want to hop in on that transition? Well, I'm gonna hop over to our newer matches. We have a couple matches that were matched virtually. So Nicole, what has it been like starting your match in a pandemic?
What has it been like? It's been, well, so the thing about, I feel like all these Zoom calls, these Zoom relationships, is that, I mean, everybody's life is kind of monotonous and there's not some gigantic thing to talk about. So really we're just walking through life together, which everyone is, but walking through kind of like not listing the events and the activities that we did. We can't really talk about what did you do today? What did you do today? It's really just like, how are you? And what's on your mind? And what dance did you make up today? What's going on with your sister? And we kind of can really check in on those details that I feel like maybe otherwise would have been lost when you have so many events. And my protege is very active, so I feel like we would have ended up talking about a lot of different events that she's doing, and instead we're talking a lot about just like, how are you feeling? And so that feels really special. So that's actually kind of a nice thing about that I've noticed about being a virtual match, is that in the past when I've done this, I do think it's a lot more kind of, and then you try it out for what, and then what happened? And it takes a little bit longer to get into this kind of space of like, okay, so like, how do you feel today? What happened last week? I don't know. It's just very nice. I've really enjoyed it. But also before we were talking about, our original plan was to do sometimes on the phone and sometimes on FaceTime Zoom to like avoid fatigue. Now we only do FaceTime. We never did the phone thing. And I originally thought I would get really tired. And sometimes before the call, I am like, I don't think I can do this. But yeah, getting, like other people said, once I'm on and I see her and we're talking, I'm like transported back to high school. I'm so invested in these high school dramas and the things going on. It's just like, she can't say that. Like, that was your idea. This was your dance. It's nice. It's very nice.
Did someone else want to hop in about their investment in the high school drama? Javar, what was the process of getting matched like for you?
Oh, it was quite a long process, because I believe I found out about the program at my brother's keeper event. I want to say at the tail end of, we all lost track of time given what's been going on, but 2019, I think, yeah. So then I met you, and I think we did a couple of the events, the trainings, and then I was just about to match with somebody, and that's when the pandemic happened. So I was kind of on pause, but Caitlin did an excellent job of keeping me in the loop and kind of following up with me and saying, hey, are you still interested? Are you still interested? I'm like, yes, I absolutely am. Like, I want to I want to do this. I want to, I'm losing my mind. So it was great. And when we did eventually match, similar to what Nicole was saying, the National Mall's kind of been like our best friend. We frequented that place a lot, and again, walking through life. And given that even for adults, this is a lot that's been going on the past year, and it's really, really, you just become a great listener, right? A teenager kind of walking through everything from what's going on in the summer, and it's just nice to hear, just keeping each other sane type of thing.
Yes, snaps to Javar, who did all of his intake in person just before pandemic. And thank you for staying in the loop, because it's been great to have you get to know your protege and watch that. Before we kind of head in and see if there are any questions from the stream, I do want to take a moment to say these mentoring relationships don't necessarily end at graduation. So we do have a couple of mentors here who have stayed connected with their matches after graduation. So Chris, tell me a little bit about, what your match was like, and then how it transitioned after your protege graduated.
Yeah, so quite an interesting time to make that transition during a pandemic. So if you think that it's hard to get a job normally, try then. But honestly, it's been, luckily we were 3 years-ish or so in at that point, so we were pretty well established. Just a couple things just to react to what we said so far in terms of direct impact, or why I got started. Evaluating all the different ways that I could volunteer. Right now with my job, it's largely theoretical in terms of working with nonprofits. And this is what everyone has said so far. Like, this is the most direct impact you can make in a volunteer capacity. I've worked for volunteer organizations in terms of like participating. I've donated to my college and things like that. If you really want to get the direct impact in maximizing your time, this is absolutely the place to do it, for sure. And again, just transitioning into the labor market with Warren for 3 years, that was really essential. And just to reiterate what everyone has said so far, it is absolutely a two-way street. The equality is right there in the relationship, and they will feel that. And that is across the span of relationships. A part of the reason I got involved as well was two people, Shaquille O'Neal and Killer Mike, both recommended. They're like, if you want to have an impact, get involved with a high school student tomorrow. And they were absolutely right. So in terms of volunteering things, again, there's all those options out there. This one really does back up, what the impact is in both ways. So yeah, it's been really powerful. And again, I was just to what Brian said was actually really made me think, because focusing on the tangible and in terms of tangible victories, in terms of my particular experience, that has been more challenging. And so along the entire way, focusing on the small wins was really important. And him getting a job was the ultimate precipice after all our work. So yeah, he's fully employed. He's working at Harris Teeter, kicking butt. So it's been wonderful. Yeah, it's again, I can't support getting involved enough. Just one more final thing in terms of surprises, Caitlin, and this is really more of a testament to the support group around here. The support network in this area can be a little sobering. So in terms of the support for kids who really need it, sometimes you might be their best resource when they exhaust all the other options locally. And some of that can be a little disheartening, but that again, not something I necessarily expected, but what you will likely experience to be a part of this. So navigating that will be, pretty important as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Onisha is our other veteran and OG mentor in the call. What has the transition been like for you, and how have things changed since Brianna graduated?
Well, Brianna is too busy for me nowadays. She is living her best life, doing college kid things that I envy and miss. And she's too busy. That's the biggest change. But jokes aside, our transition was relatively seamless. One thing that we still practice is trying to connect once a month. And we have a set time that we talk once a month. It's the third Thursday of each month that we meet up and we do FaceTime. So that's helped with the transition. But I was somewhat being transparent when I say she's too busy for me lately. But
fair enough.
That's what happens when you go to college. I expected it nonetheless, but I know she still appreciates me and knows that I'm still here. So, but yeah, the direct answer to your question is that it was relatively seamless because we continued our monthly check-ins.
Yeah, what's funny is, some of the proteges, Brian, Ryan, and Danny all have senior proteges. I think that's it right now, but we're starting to talk about that transition. And around this time, maybe a little earlier, mentors start to ask, well, what happens when they graduate? And I'm like, I just stopped calling you every month. You guys will continue. I know I've known you guys for 2 years. Nothing's going to change.
Yeah, it's
anyone,
funny.
go ahead.
It's funny because Saban is my protege and he's a senior. And this came up, but I mean, it wasn't even a question for him. And it also wasn't a question for me. It was just kind of like, I'm going to college. Like, I'm going to come and visit you, you know, next year when I come back to DC to see my folks. Like, it's just a natural thing. Like, we just expected to continue the relationship, you know, once the mentor program officially ended. So
Yeah.
I think that's probably the case for most people. I hope so.
Yeah, I agree. I think that once you form that bond, you don't just walk away from someone when they become your mentee. It's something that I think that, you know, as time goes on and life happens, you make those, the frequency of how much you speak to that person may change, but the bond itself has been formed and time will not change that. So I expect that Brianna will be invited to my wedding and that we will, you know, I hope that one day I will be invited to hers. So I don't see this as, even though the program is technically through high school, through, you know, 12th grade, I think if you really invest yourself in the program, it'll be something that's more elongated and perhaps lifelong.
Awesome. Thank you. Kiana, do we have any questions in the chat box or I can jump in?
We have one thus far, which is from Tochi, who asked, since joining the program, how has the interaction with Protege's family been?
Anyone want to jump in?
Yeah, I can jump in on that one. So my interaction with my protege's family has been tremendous. His mom has been super involved from start to finish. I think she helped get him out of his shell to do this program in the first place. And you know, he's loved it since we've started doing it. So I think, you know, we're appreciative that she was able to do that. But even outside my direct interaction with my protege, you know, I interact with his mom quite often. We worked on college applications together, internship applications, just catching up in general, you know, how we can work together to drive home some of the same points. So it's absolutely a team effort, with, you know, the family being the main team member and, you know, trying to lend the resources I can when I can, but it's been a great experience.
Thanks, Brian. Anyone else want to talk about families?
Yeah, I think it's a range. I think there's like a spread, right? And so I think I'm a little bit on the other side of the spectrum where I don't interact as much with my protege's family. He lives with his dad, and you know, we've interacted maybe like once or twice, but it's I think the relationship with the family more so in my case is when in sort of learning the role of a mentor and sort of where that ends and the family's role begins, right? Especially when it comes to college applications and things like that, kind of understanding like, you know, where we're both trying to help this one person and where I kind of say like, okay, well, you know, I will step back and defer to the family here, as opposed to like sort of try to mentor in a certain way. Keeping in mind that we're all kind of working toward the same thing, right? Which is the best outcome for the protege. So I think that was something in particular that I had to think, you know, sort of reflect on a little bit in the beginning of my mentorship relationship was sort of what that relationship with the family through my protege was going to be like. But you figure it out, and you all end up on the same team.
Yeah, Caitlin, I'll jump in. It's basically like a dual caring role. You can feel what the family is providing, and whether it's logistical for a college or work app or something more emotional or actually something private, which is often the case if they don't want to talk to their mom or dad about that, you kind of feel out where the gaps or where they aren't there, and you try and fill those. Some of that might be explicit talking to the parents. In my case, a lot of it is not. It's a lot of feeling what Warren's getting from his mom, and he cares about his mom so much. But in other cases, he comes to me. That's what the relationship feels like.
Yeah, I think it's like complementary. Like you're kind of like trying to see what you can, like you said, Chris, where you can kind of fill in the gaps. I like how you said that.
And I'll share very quickly just to echo what everyone's saying. I remember, so we usually try to FaceTime or meet on Fridays. And I remember one morning, Dennis texted me. And he says, "Hey, my mom wants to speak with you today." And for a second, I'm like, "Oh, you know, what happened?" And I'm kind of freaking out, like I was in trouble. And it very much wasn't the case. She just kind of shared something that wasn't major, but she understands us as being an extension of that support. And again, to what Danny was saying, we're working towards that same goal. And it was just really cool because it kind of reinforced what we're kind of here for. So.
Anyone else want to hop in on family navigation and working with them and being supportive? And I've heard recently a mentor is a guide on the side, and I really like that sentiment. But does anyone else want to jump in?
Sure, I'll jump in really quickly. I know that we should all remember our teenage years and how loony we were during that time period. So I think at times I served as somewhat of a wise counsel to Brianna as she navigated things with her parents. But you have to tread that with caution because that person is indeed the parent, and you don't ever want to appear as though you're telling a child to do, and they are a child. In fact, you don't want to appear as though you're telling a child to do something in opposition of what the parent told, or creating distinction within the household. So I teetered with caution, but I would often remind her that your mother is there to support you. She loves you, even if you don't understand why. So I think that approach proved itself to be fruitful. One thing that is related, particularly as it pertains to college applications, scholarships, opportunities to do various programs before college or something of that sort. One thing I found to be helpful is coordinating with the school guidance counselor, because what I found is that in trying, Brianna was applying for a prestigious program at Spelman studying biology. And what I found is that we were duplicating efforts. Both of us were trying to raise funds so that Brianna could get there. And in reality, if we had coordinated our efforts a little bit earlier on, we probably could have done a better job at getting those resources together for her. So if I could do my mentor-mentee, do the program again and be more mindful, the one thing I would change is I would have reached out to the school guidance counselor as soon as I was assigned to my protege, of course, with the permission of the parent. But I think that coordinating those efforts are really important, because some of the school guidance counselors are really on it, and they feel a sense of territorialness, if I may, if you're telling the student to do something different than what they experience. So coordinating those efforts and making sure that relationship, not only with the parent, but also with the school and the guidance counselor, is also important in terms of a fruitful and advantageous mentor-mentee relationship.
Yeah, I want to come back to this because I think that's super important. I also want to circle back to family real quick, because I did see Liz. I feel like Liz wanted to add something in there, and I think she can have some good additions to that.
Yes. So I'm more on this side that Danny was on, and I've had almost no interaction with my protege's parent. It's really just been myself and my protege. But what I have learned so much is about her extended family structure, and the culture that she comes from is completely different than how I was raised. So I have learned so much in the 2 years that we have been matched, that I've even taken some of what her experience is and tried to implement it for myself, and then tried to give guidance of things that I know work but aren't siloed to one familial structure or another. But mine has been, very different, and I've been kept at a distance, which is fine. That's how it works. Very protective, not going to poke at that. And every once in a while, the door opens a little bit and I get a little bit of a peek, but more often than not, you know, it's something that does stay closed, but that's what she's comfortable with. That's what her family is comfortable with. So I think, as you've heard from, you know, many others, you'll get, you may have a different experience than another match in the program.
Awesome. Thanks, Liz. So let's go back to kind of that whole navigating college exploration and working with the school. You know, that's something that's really, really a challenge, but Onisha's right. Like, DC schools more often than not have amazing college counselors and have really well-trained people to help navigate the financial component of that in particular. And that's a really personal thing. You know, it kind of ties into families. That's personal to each family, and each family is going to handle that differently. But does anyone want to talk about how they've kind of navigated that challenge? I know that some of you, you know, your proteges are in, you know, 9th grade, so it's a little bit different. But does anyone want to talk about kind of what that's been like so far, or how that's worked?
I'm happy to talk about that briefly. So Savan's applied to colleges all throughout the fall. He's been accepted to some. He's still applying to a few. We worked on building out his college list over the summer. And then once he had it together in the early fall, I reached out to his college admissions counselor at his school and just said, hey, like, this is what we've pulled together. Based on what you know about, you know, Savan's transcript, like, what do we need to do? Like, are there suggestions you have? Are we being realistic? Are there schools that we need to add? Are there schools that we need to remove? And she was extremely helpful and was happy to, like, provide insight and tell me all about, you know, the FAFSA applications that you need to complete in order to get aid, and, like, walk me through the process, because I hadn't, you know, done this in, you know, almost 2 decades. So I found it extremely helpful to, like, preemptively reach out to them and make that connection and just say, hey, I'm here. This is who I am, like, explain who you are and, like, what you're trying to accomplish. And, you know, I had a great experience with Savan's college counselor.
Yeah, just quickly echoing that, I had basically the same experience reaching out to the counselor, and I was surprised because I emailed the counselor, and later that day he emailed me back and said, let's hop on the phone tomorrow, and was just super receptive of having another person behind the efforts there, and was, you know, happy to share the workload, but brought, you know, I was super impressed with the resources he brought to bear.
At the risk of starting a pattern here of being the counterpoint to Brian and now Ryan as well, I think a little bit about something that Onisha said earlier about it taking a village to raise a child. And I think in my experience, I kind of saw that as a village of 2, me and the dad. And I got so sort of focused on the process of college applications and helping choose the schools and work on the essays. And I honestly forgot that there was a college counselor to help as well. And in that case, Caitlin came in and helped. And in our monthly conversations, in one of those conversations, I was like, this is insane. Like, we're spending so much time working on this stuff. And I applied to colleges 6-7 years ago, and I don't even remember how these things work anymore. And she said, well, have you talked to the counselor? And I was like, oh. And, you know, that's when Caitlin in her mentor's mentor role really helped out a lot. And it's been very helpful since then, because I know nothing of the FAFSA. So that's something that now my protege is getting a little bit more help from someone more qualified than me. But I commend Brian and Ryan for having that foresight earlier than me.
Kiana, do we have anything else in the chat box before I ask another? Go ahead.
Yeah, we have one more question, which is, do the mentors get a chance to build a relationship or relationships with other mentors? And if so, how has this mentor-mentor experience helped in the mentor individual journey?
Can I go first? So I started, I don't know how long ago this was. I guess this would have been 4 years ago. So that's what it says on the screen. But I was here, I started before Caitlin and Kiana, And the person who I believe was in Caitlin's role was Jonathan Silas. And we had our training. It was just myself and another mentor. And we all formed a really close-knit friend group, and to this day we still talk regularly. So when outside opens up, I encourage the mentors to gather, celebrate, and get to know each other, because we're like-minded individuals here. Like we're all of this, cut from the same cloth in terms of our sense of duty to serve and to uplift, and use ourselves to do that, as opposed to our money, but use what really matters, which is our time. So I think you'll find a lot of kinship bonds in the midst of this circle. Again, when outside opens up, you should take the opportunity to get to know your counterparts. And Caitlin and her staff organize various events where people can mix and mingle and things of that sort. So take advantage of those opportunities, because you never know, you might meet someone that becomes your lifelong best friend. So I would highly suggest that people take advantage of that. That was a benefit for me as well. I didn't expect to make 2 really wonderful friends signing up to be a mentor. So that was an added plus.
Awesome. Thanks, Onisha. Yeah, Nick, I'm going to throw it over to you.
I figured you might. So for those who don't know, Liz and I are actually married. We're in the same house right now on different floors. We could have, I guess, done it in the same Zoom box, but trying something new tonight. But we, Caitlin and I were talking about this actually at our last check-in a couple weeks ago, that it's been really helpful for Liz and I, especially during the COVID times, to bounce ideas off of each other on not only how to connect with our proteges, but also hearing the different things that her protege might be going through and then sharing mine. We see a lot of similarities in different cases, and different strategies to kind of navigate, whether it's a family issue or a school issue or a friend's issue, whatever it might be. Having Liz, like obviously in the same house as me, is super helpful in just getting these ideas out there and sharing our stories too, which is awesome. But love to connect more with the other mentors, obviously, especially once COVID ends and we can meet each other in person. But really valuable right now having Liz in the same house to share these experiences with as well.
Yeah, it does help that I can poke my husband and say, hey, what did you think of this, or what did you do in this situation? But Nick was actually matched before I was. So when I was starting my match, Nick was super helpful to me with some questions and logistics. And it's really funny, we've done different activities with our proteges. I don't think either of us have done the same activity yet. So that's also been a lot of fun. And then all the 4 of us have gotten to meet up once at one of the events put on by Mentors Inc. So that was really fun because our proteges also connected, and they're kind of funny with each other. So that part was exciting, and I would love to meet more people. So yeah, when that opens up, let's hang out, guys.
Yeah, and that was also funny because each of us had talked to each other about our proteges for over a year before having met the other person's protege in person. So it's funny, like the picture you have in your head of somebody when you meet them. I'm like, oh, this is okay. Now that all makes sense. Like it all kind of connects once you meet that person in person. So it was really funny after all that time.
Awesome, thanks. And I will say, like, on that note, is we used to do things like Onisha said, where we would get everyone together and give opportunities to just, check in. With the pandemic, sorry, it wasn't a priority, but it's definitely a priority now. We're really excited. I view this as also a kickoff to more opportunities to bring mentors together, and hoping to do some more of those. And Kiana's been helping out, so keep an eye out. Next month in spring, we're going to be doing some more of these so you guys can connect, because that's definitely important to us. Any other questions before okay, cool. Kalia, share a favorite memory with your protege.
There's so many of them, but actually, when we first, met each other and started to go do things and just trying to navigate through the process of figuring out what she liked and making sure I wasn't, planning things that was too boring or, or too fun where we wouldn't be able to connect with each other. And so we went to a museum, and think it was the Smithsonian. I think she told you about it, but yeah, we went there, and we kind of got lost in the museum. I don't know what that was all about because I had been there before, but I think I was just so distracted getting to know her. And so we had a lot of fun on that particular day, but we also found out how shy both of us were. Both of us are completely shy. And so it was a difficult situation, but us getting lost actually had us come together and, just talk a little more. And it just helped us to kind of navigate through the process of just getting to know each other and becoming more comfortable.
Thanks, Kalia. Anyone else want to jump in with a favorite memory real quick?
Sure. Yeah. My protege and I, we went kayaking on the Potomac, and we shared a large kayak for the two of us. And I think we were both equally scared of falling in, which maybe he had not kayaked before and shook the kayak maybe more than we were expecting, than either of us were expecting. So it was a pretty fun experience and a good bonding experience in general.
Awesome, thanks. As we get close to the hour, are there any more questions in the chat box before I kind of head us in the direction? As we get close to the hour, this last one, I'm gonna, kind of walk through. I want everyone to answer, but if everyone could share one piece of advice for someone as a mentor or something you wish you had known, and then your favorite thing about being a mentor. Okay. So is someone ready to start, or I will just call on someone?
I'll start. I already shared my advice, which is to consult with the guidance counselor. So I'm going to defer to that since I already provided that. And then the second, what was the second part?
Your favorite thing about being a mentor.
My favorite thing about being a mentor was being reminded of how wonderful youth is and how I should have done a better job appreciating those years, because we're always in a rush to grow up, to be a grown up, but it was refreshing to reflect on those years and remember how precious they are. So that was one of my favorite parts of being a mentor.
I'll go. So my first piece of advice would be to get on the phone. Some days it's going to be harder than others. Your day may be nuts. I don't know, what everybody's day job, night job is, but my hours are pretty crazy. I never know, but just take the 20 or 30 minutes to jump on the phone. It means so much to your protege, and you will feel better after you have made the phone call and chatted. It's going to give you just as much as it's going to give your protege. So just stick with it. It's hard. Some weeks you'll slip, but if you just try to dedicate each week, you're really, it's going to do as much for you as it will also do for your protege. And then what I have learned, what's my favorite thing?
Favorite thing. You can share what you learned if you want. That's a great one too.
Yeah, they're kind of hand in hand. I think I have learned so much about my protege's culture, food, family structure, and just a whole nother world that I knew nothing about. And now I have read more about it. I can talk with others about it, and it's just really been so great. And then I have one more. To see what this year has been through the eyes of someone that's 16 has been refreshing, challenging, and wonderful. I mean, we've had really interesting conversations about politics. Everything that goes on with that has just been so rewarding and refreshing to have that conversation with a 16-year-old. So yeah, that's my stuff.
go quickly. Or go ahead, Brian. Go ahead, Brian.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I'd say that one piece of advice I'd offer is, take advantage of the Mentors Inc. resources as well. Chances are, if you're having an issue, it's you're not the only one. So, whether it's the, periodic update emails with ideas of things to do, or just getting the advice from Caitlin of, do go reach out to the counselor, or do make sure you have this conversation with the parents before, working on something together. Found that to be super helpful throughout the relationship. And my favorite part of the relationship has really been kind of the longevity of it. Over the past 2.5 years, just seeing my protege set goals that seemed super far off, in terms of working towards college, and just seeing him, develop and work towards that, and help him set little goals over time to get there, has just been super rewarding and very enjoyable.
I'll Ryan, were you gonna go?
Yeah, I can go really quickly.
Go for it, man.
I think my piece of advice would be, try to become friends first. If you just come out of the gate with a bunch of advice, it's not going to be well received, because you don't really know this person that well, and you'd be surprised how quickly you become friends. And it isn't so structured, and you're just texting and calling, very frequently. That's what I have with Sivan. And then my favorite part has been kind of learning from him. Like, I try to impart my wisdom, but learning from him and like having his personality rub off on me. Like, I'm a very intense person, and Sivan is very chill, and I probably needed more chill in my life. So that has been great.
+1 on the friend first approach for sure. Coming in blazing with college apps is probably not the way to do it. But, and again, like, I'm sure we all have our own experiences there. In terms of advice, the one thing I think that is a really powerful part of mentoring is just kind of expanding their perspective in every way. So not only your thoughts and how you think and view the world, but literally where you take them and where you hang out. Like, Warren has almost never left DC. And he's terrified of being on a flight, but we're going to get on a plane somewhere. We're going to go somewhere and like expand his perspective on what can be possible. That just, every time I hang out with him, I'm like, how can we do something new that he wouldn't be able to do before? And he loves it. So that's just one piece. And then just like things to take away. Again, if you invest in this, you're going to get a strong friend, which what is more invaluable than that? And again, by the nature of all our relationships, it's going to be someone quite different than you probably. Like, me and Warren are different on almost every demographic, and what I'm able to learn from him and the strength of it is extremely powerful, and you can't really change much for that. So yeah, it's been great.
I'll go next. So I think the best advice I could give is to be an effective listener. And I say that because my protege tells me a lot of things that she does not tell her parents. And if I weren't listening and taking it in, I wouldn't know how to make decisions, or the best decisions on whether this is something I should share with her parents, or something that's just, a little secret between us, but basically between friends, but it's not serious, and keep it to myself. So I think just being an effective listener is going to go a long way. In addition to that, the best reward has been just watching her grow into, a young woman, and just watching her resilience, her growth. And she's very appreciative of me, and it just makes me feel good as well.
I can go. I would say, in terms of advice, is just being patient and being willing to let a relationship grow and develop. And like everybody, a couple people have already said, to start with that friendship but just kind of sitting in the awkwardness, not being the one to, well, you're the adult, so you can kind of be like, yeah, sometimes it's awkward, and that's okay. But yeah, to just be patient and to let it grow. My favorite thing about our relationship is, I think similar to Kalia, like seeing my protege grow, like we're planning our 16th birthday. Like it's just, and it's so important. Like, what do you give boys in a gift bag? Like all these little things are just really, really, really fun. And I'm just savoring being 15 going on 16 again with her, and like she's a crush. And well, I think he's a boyfriend now. I can't talk about that with you, but it's just so much fun. And so I don't hide how excited I am for all of these milestones that maybe seem small to me because I'm grown, but are so huge to her. I'm just like living in it with her, and I really love it. It is very, very fun to go through life with her.
Yeah, I think I touched on what would be one of my pieces of advice earlier, and just saying, like, you know, remembering that you're doing a lot to help, but you don't have to do it all yourself. Like there's a lot of other resources out there as well. So kind of, you know, part of being a mentor is knowing when to bring in other resources and other support in the relationship. And then the other thing that I think about a lot, and that I've thought about a lot in this conversation, is people are talking about like how much they've learned from their proteges as well. And in the case of like Chris and Ryan just now saying like how different their proteges are from them, is like kind of trust the process a little bit. Like I think Mentors Inc. does a really fantastic job of matching mentors and proteges, and I think that over time, you know, if you really invest the effort, you know, like Liz said, really just like being consistent and having your calls and forming that relationship, then, you know, it's really going to work out well. In terms of what I think we're getting to the part where we might start hearing some of the similar things again, but as someone who's only, you know, been with their protege for a year and a half, a little over a year maybe I didn't realize how much my protege would grow in just the span of a year. I feel like young people grow a lot quickly. And so in the time that we've been together, I've already seen him grow up a whole lot. And that's been really, really rewarding. And I can only imagine that for the folks that have been with their proteges for 2, 3, 4 years, it's been even more. So I look forward to that myself.
I can go. I think advice-wise, especially talking to myself 2 years ago, I would say don't necessarily trust the teenager with all of the communication at first. Really put some structure in there right away and make plans ahead of time, and really work on that, especially in the first few months. I think our biggest speed bumps they were all basically related to communication. We got along well once we were in the same room or once we started, getting that, but it was, we were just on different wavelengths at first, and it was, trying to figure out that with a teenager. So if I were to go back a couple of years, I would have made sure I put a lot more structure in from the start. And then I guess my favorite thing, or some of the best, is echoing everybody else, the growth. It's been amazing to see that in 2 years with my protege, and I'm really excited to see him finish his junior year and hopefully have a full senior year. And I can't remember who else said it, but yeah, that trying new things. My protege, especially, he's not from the United States. He only came here a few years ago. So it's really a lot of culture shock for him. So a lot of the best experiences we've had have been trying things that he just had never heard of before, or just would never have been, in his normal circle, really exposed to, and just exposing him to like baseball games or a museum or this new kind of food at a restaurant that he might not have had before. Those have been our best experiences, and the ones that come to mind first when, someone like Caitlin asks questions like that.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and say that the advice I'd recommend is do not underestimate just how simple your presence means a lot. Having started this relationship during COVID, I'd often overthink, what are we going to talk about on FaceTime? What are we going to do? Everything is closed. But, those 20, if not 15-minute conversations will then lead to 3 hours walking around the National Mall, which kind of ties into what is my favorite part about it, but a fun story is favorite part is those quick conversations that then turn into him opening up about whatever it is, and you're like, maybe 2 weeks ago we wouldn't have talked about that, but we see each other, our relationship has grown. But it was cool in response to like exposing the new things. hopefully this isn't embarrassing for him, but my protege did not know how to ride a bike. And I'd always text him on Friday, if it's not me with an idea, I'll say, hey, what do you want to do? And if he doesn't have anything, I'll say, hey, today's the day. And we did like a capital bike share, and we just like figured it out on the mall. And it was just really cool and rewarding to see that happen. And he was like very like excited. So it was cool.
I think I'm the last one. So I kind of have like two quick pieces of advice. The first one is to put yourself in their shoes, because we're a lot older now and it's a different time. So you just have to think back to when you were 15 and 16 and be patient with them. And just remember, like, every day is different. They're human. They're not going to feel the same in 5 minutes. So you just have to put yourself in their shoes and be patient. And the other one is be creative. They always say 2 days are better than 1. And especially for me, like, most of our match has been in COVID, like 99%. So it's just, we had to get a little bit more creative with our conversations, because we're FaceTiming every week. And at a point, that's too much for somebody, especially if you've been on calls all day for school or for work. So you just have to think of other things to do. The resources are out there because everyone in the world is going through this. So you just have to get creative and use what you both like to find something that is going to keep the relationship going. One of the best parts of this match has been how much we're actually alike. I know someone mentioned how they are very different from their protege, but I've also found out, for me, we're a lot alike. It's kind of scary. And I was fortunate that she was actually the first match that I met. I met 3 people that day, but she was the one that stuck. So I was fortunate, but I think it's because we're so much alike, and I just did not expect that.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. I know Kiana mentioned there's one more question in the chat box if you want to ask that.
Yeah, there's one last one, and I'm going to show everyone on the screen so that they can see their reaction. It's a pretty simple question. Feel free to unmute yourself or just show a chat or show your visceral reaction. But the last question is becoming a mentor life-changing?